Welcome to episode 60 of the Sports Geek podcast. On this week's podcast, I catch up with Jack Elkins from the Orlando Magic to talk business innovation in sports, and Katie Morgan from the Texas Rangers on ticket sales, because it's all about getting the cheeks on the seats.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for the sports digital marketer. And now, here's your host, who uses DigiSports Sports Biz and SM Sports hashtags equally, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast. This is episode 60. Thank you for those of you who have been listening since episode 1, when I had James Royer from the Tampa Bay Lightning on, and for all the guests in between. But if you are listening for the first time, thank you very much. Please send me a tweet and tell me that you're listening. Every feedback is welcomed on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Tumblr, pretty much any platform. You can find me on so at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek on Twitter, and always reviews on iTunes are very much welcome. I do read them all and take all the feedback very seriously. On this week's episode, I've got a couple of people who I caught up with at SEAT conference. So they both presented at SEAT. Didn't get a chance to chat to them due to the lost voice. So scheduled a podcast interview to catch up with them. I catch up with Jack Elkins from the Orlando Magic to talk about business innovation and what he's doing at the Orlando Magic. And then I catch up with Katie Morgan from the Texas Rangers, who spoke on the CRM track around the importance of data and how they've integrated their systems from a ticketing data point of view to better target and better understand their fans, and then present them with the right offers. Because, as I said in the opener, it's all about getting the cheeks in the seats. Just a little bit of an update from what's happening here in Australia. If you're following from around the world, both AFL and NRL finals are up and about, getting to the pointy end of the season. Much the same as the Major League Baseball, ending into the pointy end of the season. So you can keep an eye on that via the hashtags AFL Finals and NRL Finals, both on all platforms. And I've got a few interviews. I've been banking up a few interviews the last couple of weeks. Had some internet issues at Sports Geek HQ that has caused a bit of angst. Hopefully you can get this episode out and then a few more. Got some great interviews coming up. But first, here is my interview with Jack Elkins from the Orlando Magic. Very happy to welcome a fellow SEAT steering committee member. Caught up with him in Miami and did a couple of panels he covered for me when I didn't have my voice. Jack Elkins from the Orlando Magic, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sean. It's great to actually be able to hear you this time.
Yeah, exactly. For those who weren't in Miami, Jack and I did a session on Sunday. I was on a strict word limit of 0 words, so I was just pretty much watching the timing when we were doing the showcase, and Jack more than ably stepped in to handle the showcase. We were showing off some startups. Your title at the Orlando Magic is absolutely fascinates me, is Business Innovations Manager. You've been with the Magic since 2005. How did you? Do you want to take us through the story of how you ended up in that role? Because for me, like I said, it's a fascinating combination. And if you're looking at it on your LinkedIn profile, you go, "What exactly is that role, and how did you get there?"
Sure, Sean. It's actually really exciting to me that right now I'm getting to meld the two worlds that I love in what I do. I'm very passionate about Orlando and the startup community that's here, as well as corporate innovation initiatives. And to be able to do that with my hometown team is really exciting. I've been with the Magic for 9 years. The first big project that I worked on was actually the construction of the Amway Center. Starting from pre-construction, we toured quite a lot of buildings, and then moving into sort of the political approval side to get that pushed through, and then the overall development. That was a big part of my career at the Orlando Magic. And now, and then coming out of that, I moved into technology because that was one aspect of the project that I managed. And about 2 years ago, we were very fortunate at the Magic that our senior leadership came up with 4 really great core values, one of which was around innovation. And at the time, I was considering leaving to start my own company. And instead, stuck around to manage the activation of that core value and in different initiatives that go along with it. And it's been really exciting to start that. We're still in the middle of the journey right now, and hopefully I'll be able to share a little more with you.
So, I mean, innovation means, so many things to so many different businesses and different people. What's your key focus? What's innovation to you, especially from a sports and a sports technology focus?
Absolutely. It's the buzzword of the day. I think that there's two key ways that I see companies approaching it. I see them approaching it internally, and I see them approaching it externally, and that's exactly how we're trying to do that as well. A lot of companies internally either work with a third-party group like Frog and IDEO, or a group such as that nature like Luma, or they take on sort of running their own process internally. We tend to, here at the Magic, we've created an innovations lab where we're using design thinking and trying to capture what we can from our internal staff, trying to maximize what we can pull from our staff and creating a space for them to actually share ideas and be creative and a way to actually channel those effectively. And then we see companies trying to capture that externally with another buzzword of the day, which is open innovation. And the concept is that no company can master all the knowledge that it needs nowadays to survive. And so the borders of the company are becoming more porous. And this was coined by Henry Cheeseborough. And the concept is that you can find potentially disruptive companies for your industry that exist outside your walls that you can start to work to test prototypes with or practice open innovation with in order to help bring, at least in our case, help bring what's next to the market rather than have it what's next be dictated to us. And we do this because we want to try to bring what's the next latest and greatest thing to our fans.
So I guess there's a couple of points from my point of view. Like normally of people that I'm talking about, when they're talking about innovation, they're talking about the latest technology. And, when we're recording this, the iPhone 6 and the Apple Watch was just launched a couple of hours ago. So they're always on the technology. They're like, here's the new thing, here's the new gadget, here's iBeacons. But I'm guessing you're looking at both that technology side of things and what's developing there, but you're also talking about design and experience. So it's also business process innovation, how you can do things better around the stadium and through your just normal business transactions. So are you handling innovation on both sides of that fence?
Sean, you're exactly right. Innovation, and it's funny. Professor Rob Walcott from the Kellogg School of Management says innovation is really about business design. And so when you take, for instance, starting an innovations lab, it actually requires a culture change for innovation to become a part of your identity. And that's something that we're going through right now, which is not to say there's not a third piece in capturing innovation internally and externally. And that's also, how do you play a part in this ecosystem, this new shift that we're seeing, this rise in entrepreneurialism, this rise of startups, the rise of the creative class, folks that are getting their excitement off starting a company and exiting that company and starting another one, not necessarily attending games. And so how do you make relationships within that field in an authentic way, whereas it used to just be about, hey, who could I sign up for the next sponsorship, right? So how do you have relationships with this group that is disruptive and causing the next wave of innovation to occur?
And it is really a culture change, because you're effectively trying to get your whole organisation to say, how can I improve this sort of every single day, aren't you?
Yeah, and I would add that you got to be careful when we're talking about two things. One is innovation is not just technology and digital. It just happens that today, the majority of what we're seeing in terms of people highlighting innovative things happens to be around digital technology. But innovations happen through a lot of different ways and processes. And quite frankly, a number of our projects in our lab just happen to do with collaboration amongst our staff, as well as some other more what would be high-profile type things if they work for our fan base.
And you were sort of saying it's a process. It reminds me of a of a blog post that a mate of mine did. I spoke about him at Steve Samatino. He wrote a blog post of two bathrooms, tailored two bathrooms he went into in two different corporations, and one had a sign that said, "Please leave the toilet the way you found it," and the other one said, "Did you bring your best self to work today? Can you show us something new and amazing we haven't thought of?" And, two completely different signs in a bathroom can, make a change to the culture and make it an innovative business. So is that type of thing happening in the Magic organization internally?
I would say yes, it is. I would say one of the things we've learned as we've embarked on this is that you can't avoid the journey. And it's not like you can put it in a binder and lay it on the desk and implement it day one. It's something that does take a culture change in order for that to happen. But then once that starts to tip, like where I believe we are now, then it is possible to start working with those folks in the community, those disruptive companies, even doing something like a reverse pitch scenario where you take insights that you've learned from your fans or a need that you have. Kansas City did this last year at KC Next.
Yep.
There was a reverse pitch event in Kansas City, and the Kansas City Chiefs actually said, "Hey, we're putting a Wi-Fi network out there, and we want y'all to help us understand what we need to do to use that to better the fan experience." And I think you're going to see more and more teams doing corporate innovation initiatives, kind of like what we're doing, because I really think that the next sort of entrepreneurial wave is going to sweep through sports, media, and entertainment.
Yeah, I wanted to tap into that whole entrepreneurial innovation startup stuff because it's something that I'm also passionate about. But I'm also interested because I work with teams, and so I get pitched a lot of, here's an idea that I think will work well for sports, and they're pitching, and and I know people who are listening and people like yourself who are working in sports get pitched a lot, whereas you're actually outward and you're out there trying to find the latest and greatest. Have you got any advice for those type of disruptive companies, how to, one, get your attention, but also how to pique your interest in pitching to a sports team and what you're looking for?
Sure. I think it's actually kind of loaded because I think it's actually harder to make the connection than you think. A lot of the companies that try to pitch are much more established. And I think when you're really trying to find those gems, those startups, those teams, those great teams that are out there that may not have the right concept, but they're a great team and they could bring a product that you could work with them to bring it to market and scale. And I look at the Cleveland Cavaliers as a great example, and this was a key takeaway of mine from the SEAT conference. Even today, with the announcement of Apple, they have TechCrunch Disrupt going on in San Francisco.
Yep. And
you saw Dan Gilbert and Mark Cuban out there. And Dan himself is kind of leading a resurgence in Detroit. And one of the venture capital firms that he's an investor in is an accelerator called Bism. And a gentleman that came through that accelerator, Maurice Batchelor of Snapbatch, came in with the concept. And they said, that doesn't really work, but you appear to be a great developer. Let's work together. And they came up with a great concept that they actually just rolled out to the Cavs this year, this trivia piece that they added to their app called Snapbatch.
Yep.
And so what I think is the key way to have this happen is, as we've seen during the year, a lot of teams, you just can't filter hundreds and hundreds of potential startups.
Yep.
And there's people that can help you with that. Venture capitalists can help you with that. Accelerators can help you with that. And so if you can create the relationships with those groups that are looking for the organizations to test their startups with, like an accelerator or like a VC, they can help filter, and they're looking to do 3 or 4 great deals a year, and you might be looking to test 3 or 4 great companies a year. And usually you'll find some synergies with what the top startups are in their pipeline.
And so that's primarily the reason that you're pretty much well embedded in the startup scene. What is the startup scene like in Orlando?
I actually think that it's very robust. It's something that I think the rest of the nation will start to hear more about. The developer community in Orlando is really, really strong. And another thing that we're starting to see is some of these great startups or great entrepreneurs in other states that have had exits, there's actually a tax benefit when they sell to actually relocate to a state that has no state income tax. And so we've actually seen some people moving to Orlando that were talent from previous businesses. It's a very young ecosystem that's growing very rapidly, and I think it's something that we want to be a part of. And it's something that being an Orlando native, it's great for me to play in the space that I live and play and love to be a part of these startups and these people that I love to be friends with, and actually have a chance to meld that with what I do day to day at the Magic. It's really, really gratifying.
And so, sort of going forward in the next 12 to 18 months, is there any projects that you're looking to develop, or any particular areas that you're looking to focus on? We keep seeing that, going back to the stadium, engaging the fan in the stadium, and how that is a real important piece for most teams. But then there's also how can you better engage the fan that's not at the stadium? Is there any particular focus you have going forward into the next NBA season?
I think we have a few specifics, but I think I'll start first with we're really still working on establishing the effective pipeline of prototypes and insights.
Yep.
And I think that's going to happen through our lab as we become more entrenched within the community from an authentic and grassroots perspective within this startup ecosystem. It's not natural, not usual for teams to play in that space. And it's not necessarily natural to them either, because there haven't been a lot of there haven't really been any exits with any great sports software companies yet. And so I think what they're wanting to see is the insights and needs from the team side, and we're looking to become more entrenched with identifying that local talent. So what we're working on this next year is really putting the pieces in place to be able to qualitatively identify those needs and insights from the fan using empathy, ethnographic type research methods, and then those relationships in place within that ecosystem to where once we have some of those needs and insights, whether it be a meetup group, which Orlando has some of the largest meetup groups in the Southeast, whether it be a startup weekend or a Versa Pitch event, or just having a seat within a co-working space where we can continue those conversations and identify that local talent that could take some concepts to market, and then we can test with them and prove it out.
Yeah, I reckon there is real value in meetups, and if people haven't gone to meetup.com, it's a real underground networking community. As much as things like Eventbrite are great for setting up events, meetups, meetup.com have done a great job of just collecting these groups of people that meet on a consistent basis, and some of the ideas that can spark out of those events, are fascinating. So if you can, keep participating in those conversations, but then develop, effectively a fan technology council kind of thing that can be sparking ideas for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's exactly what the sort of thing you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that from a specific standpoint, we really are looking to, the Amway Center opened in 2010. We really want to make sure we remain relevant, because the building that we opened was one of the most highly technical buildings that had ever opened at the time. And we still have a really strong, robust technology infrastructure. And so we really want to continue to bring those new concepts to our fans. One of the things that we're going to continue to work on is with our partner AmpThink on our Wi-Fi. And we are a test partner for AmpThink, and one of the first locations that they bring some of their new technology to the table. And it's been really successful for us to be able to capture something new that was first for us last year was a portal for our fans to sign in through the Wi-Fi. And it opens up a myriad of possibilities in how we can engage with them. And there are a lot of technologies we're looking to continue to test this next year.
Yeah, there was a really good. I wasn't able to attend the Jay's presentation at SEAT, but I heard nothing but good things of his presentation in the CRM track at SEAT of that case study you just said, where the portal and that you're starting to get more of that fan data, understanding what your fans want and what they're doing when they're in the stadium.
Yeah, I was actually very impressed with my colleagues at SEAT who presented. We have a business strategy group that's second to none in the sports industry, and I'm always amazed at what they're able to learn and bring to the table every year.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Jack. I'm looking forward to speaking with you more at SEAT next year in San Francisco. Thank you very much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Hopefully we won't wait till SEAT to connect again.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Jack Elkins from the Orlando Magic. Like all Sports Geek podcast guests, you can connect with Jack both on Twitter and LinkedIn by going to sportsgeekhq.com/SGP guests. If you go to the website, you can find and connect with them. Over 75 guests I've had on the podcast, and very grateful for them all taking the time to chat with me. I do want to pass on my apologies to Jack. I committed one of the cardinal sins of podcast interviewing. My first rule of podcasting is to not talk about the podcast with the guest before you start recording the podcast. I'm getting better at that. But the other rule I have is to not have interesting conversations after I turn off the mic and finish off the interview. And unfortunately, I did that with Jack this week. After we finished up that interview, we did talk about some of the innovation work the NBA is doing in betting, talking to startups and VC firms and the like around technology for stadiums, and also who's very interested in what a lot of the players are doing and how entrepreneurial they're being. We see recently with Carmelo Anthony investing in a venture capital firm looking to support startups, and Kobe Bryant also indicating it's an area he wants to get into. So apologies for that, Jack. We'll definitely have you back on the podcast to talk more about that space, because I think the sports arena is definitely one that the startup space can leverage with such a passionate fan base to be able to test these new technologies. My next guest is Katie Morgan from the Texas Rangers. I want to thank Lou from Scribe Soft for helping set up this interview. Scribe, we're a sponsor at SEAT, and Katie actually presented with Lou. We talk about that and how the Texas Rangers get cheeks on the seats. Very happy to welcome Katie Morgan, the Assistant Director of Ticket Sales at the Texas Rangers Baseball Club. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I've been trying to catch up with you for a while. We've been doing the email backwards and forwards after SEAT. I was lucky enough to be in all the digital sessions, but unfortunately I missed a bunch of the sessions in the CRM track, and that's your field. I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience at SEAT, because Miami was the first time you were at SEAT.
It was indeed, and it was actually a great conference. I came back and told my boss that it was probably one of the best conferences that I've been to thus far in my career.
Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, and the fact that the whole CRM track is just completely blowing up, to have guys like Russell Scobetti driving it, and Paul Greenberg turning up and collaborating in all the discussions. Like, I was able to pop my head into a few sessions, but absolutely, amazing sharing of stories and what you're all trying to do from an implementation point of view.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And CRM and specifically data analytics are growing so much throughout our industry that it was a real blessing for us to be able to kind of sit down and pick each other's minds. People, from football, like you mentioned, Russell Scobetti, who's no longer in football, but he used to be, and also Paul Greenberg, who is referenced as the godfather of CRM, to be able to sit down in a room with them and talk to them about some of the things that we're doing and get advice is beyond imaginable for us.
So I wanted to go into, your role as Assistant Director at Ticket Sales is all about selling the tickets, all about understanding the data. How did you come into the role? How long you started at the Rangers? A long while ago? Where did you start?
I've actually been here. I've been here for 6 years, and I started out as an inside sales representative. And from that position, I kind of moved into a ticket sales coordinator role, which then led itself into a database manager role. And now I primarily focus on the data analytics side of things. We use a data warehouse. We have replicated data with tickets.com, and then we obviously have Microsoft CRM. So we're trying to jump in head first to some of that new data analytics stuff that's going on.
And so your presentation, you did a presentation with, I hope I get Lou's name right, Anna Antonucci. Did I get that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so Lou from Scribe. So, and you were talking about extending the value of CRM through integration, which is a pretty common problem. The fact that everyone has all this data, but it's a matter of how you can get the data in the right place to be able to understand the data and get the right view of your fan. You know, the ideal thing is that 360-degree view. Do you want to take us a little bit around the problem that you had and integrating all that data?
Sure. So whenever I started as a database manager, we had Microsoft CRM, but we didn't have an integration with anything. So we didn't have our ticketing data in that system. We didn't have any demographic information in that system. So basically, we were just using it as a place for our sales representatives to house notes and information about cold calls that they were making. And when we really dug down into that system, we realized that we were missing out on a lot of what it could do for us in reference to potentially letting us vet out better leads for our sales representatives, letting it be a place for us to store information about every single buyer that we have, not just people that we're trying to do business with. So what we did is we partnered with Scribe, and we did an integration between not only our ticketing system and our CRM system, but also we used Turnkey Prospector, who provides demographic information to us. And we did an integration between that system and also CRM. So now when we look at our system, we have a little bit better view of not only our current clients, but people that we're trying to get to do business with us. And in turn, that's really helped us kind of enhance our revenue streams and also just give reps better leads to follow up on every day.
So it is just a matter of getting the right data in the right place so they have got those leads?
It really is, because if you have information, let's take you, for instance. Let's say I have information that maybe you've bought a couple of tickets from us, but then I also have some demographic information on you, where you live and, maybe what you're interested in, but those are in 3 different areas. It's really hard to combine those areas and figure out what type of buyer you actually are. But CRM, and more so the integrations with CRM, allowed us to get all of that data into one place so we could see a better picture of who our buyers are.
And is that extended to now having a better understanding of who those buyers are to now who you pitch those deals to or ticket offers and sort of help your outbound marketing when you're going out with specific ticket offers, because you know the type of buyers that you are getting now?
That's exactly right. For instance, we're integrated with our ticketing system, so we can look in CRM and say, okay, so Sean has bought 20 tickets to games this year, and we have a 20-game package that would be perfect for him. So why don't we give him a call and see if that's something that he wants to, look into? Or maybe for a different type of buyer, we noticed that they're based out of Lubbock, Texas, which is 5 hours away, but we noticed that they like to bring fairly large groups out to the game, but they're paying full price for those groups. Why don't we give them a call and offer them our group pricing and maybe get them out to a couple more games and really enhance their experience out here as well?
So have you started taking some of that data? At the moment, you're giving it to your sales people to call and follow up. But have you also started taking some of that data to attract more leads into your system?
We have. So what we've done is we've kind of done an overall analysis of who buys specific packages from us, whether that's a full season, a half season, a group buyer, a suite buyer, and really dug down and looked at what type of buyer that person is, if there's a mileage range that they are from the ballpark, if they have children in their house. Just really looking and focusing on that 360-degree view of a specific type of buyer. And then when we go out and try to find new leads, we really try to hone in on that specific type of lead for a specific package. So it's really made us more efficient when we are trying to purchase leads or potentially just find new leads in different sources. We're a little bit better apt to find the correct ones now.
And as far as, I guess, another source of data is the fact that you've got, I think it's 2.8 million Facebook fans. Are you starting to see some, taking that same demographic data, those same fan profiles, and can you target those fans and those profiles with some more efficiency because you've got that data of knowing who your fans are more likely to be?
Right. So in Major League Baseball, it's a little bit different because we partner with Major League Baseball Advanced Media in terms of doing our social media and also our email campaigns. So we've been fortunate that they have come to us with several ideas to kind of target some of those people that we're seeing who are not only, hitting us on social media, but also on our website. So we are fortunate that Major League Baseball Advanced Media helps us out with that.
Yeah, because effectively that whole side of the equation, Mark Zuckerberg's effectively doing a lot of that stuff for you to tell you that these are your most engaged fans, these are the fans visiting your site, and it's just another data source that can provide that view of the fan.
You're exactly right. And it seems like everything is moving in that direction as well. Not only are people more active on social media, but they're making their purchases online more often. They're looking for information online more often. So you really have to take that into consideration when you're marketing to new buyers.
And now that, we hear just in the last week, Twitter are bringing out a buy button, and the integration with Facebook to be able to click and buy is getting so much easier. To be able to put that offer directly in front of that right fan will become far more important, especially for the, ticket sales and things like that. To be able to get that offer to them where they're sitting, right in the palm of their hand in their mobile.
That's exactly right. Because if you go and look at the statistics, people are on their phones all the time. So if you can just hit them with an offer while they're looking at their phone, they're a lot more apt to buy it than if they have to go sit down at a computer and make a phone call. It's a one-click stop.
So from the CRM point of view, you were also on a panel around the pros and cons of the data warehouse and the analytics. I'm assuming you were definitely on the pro side, but what was that panel discussion like at SEAT?
I'm definitely on the pro side for both of those, but the panel discussion for me was very informative because I was lucky enough to have two other panel participants who took a little bit different of a view on a data warehouse and how it was set up and how they're using it. So from my perspective, I was able to not only give advice to those out there who are looking to set up a data warehouse, but I was able to take back a little bit more information on how potentially we can use it to better target people and also, potentially build regression and predictive models, which is something that we definitely want to get into eventually. So for me, it was very beneficial, and I hope that the people that were at the panel thought the same thing.
One question, you did sort of talk about it, and I definitely have seen it over the last couple of years because CRM Track at SEAT started in Boston, is that it is a very daunting process at the very beginning when you say we have got data, we have got a database, but we don't quite know enough to know what we're doing, and we don't know, we're at the very start of that mountain of here's what we want our CRM solution to be. You've climbed that mountain. I'm not, you're still climbing it because there's more things to be able to do. What advice or what tips would you give the person at the start of that trip to say we need to get our data in order, we need to get our CRM solution in place? You've gone through that with the Rangers. What's some of the advice when you're first starting on? What are some of the key things you have to look for?
I think there's two things. I think first, you need to be willing to involve a lot of people in your organization, not just sales or ticket operations or marketing. It needs to be a group effort because what we realize is we're setting it up, and even now, there are so many aspects to a CRM system and a data warehouse for that matter that hit every single department of your organization. And I think it's really important that you remember that. So while you're laying out how you're going to house your data, how you're going to get it into your CRM system, what you want it to look like, it's very beneficial to have all those people in there with you because they can say, well, if you just tweak this one field a little bit, that will be usable for us in marketing as well. So you get a little bit of a benefit from every single department. And I think the second thing that I would tell somebody is to not be afraid to reach out for help. Not only in the sports industry, but outside of the sporting industry as well. I think you can gain a lot of information from other types of companies that maybe you wouldn't have thought of because we're so honed in on just the sports side of things. So that would probably be the best advice that I could give somebody.
Well, that's right. I mean, talking to guys like Paul Greenberg, like you said, referred to as the godfather of CRM, CRM is not necessarily new technology, and there are industries that have been doing it far better than sports for many more years. You best follow their lessons and learn from what they've done to take it on board.
I agree completely. And Paul Greenberg spoke at a conference for Major League Baseball 3 or 4 years ago, and it was the first time that I had interacted with Paul. And I kind of took what he said to heart, that you really need to take advantage of those people around you. And he even gave us the ability to give him a call to consult on our CRM system. And, that's something that you have to take advantage of when you have people around you who have been doing this a lot longer than you have, or organizations that seem to have it down. Give them a call, because in the long run, not only are you making a new connection, but it's going to pay off for your organization or team.
And the other thing I think is also really important is that you're growing the knowledge in the industry itself. So the rising tides lift all boats type of strategy. If more teams are understanding the technology and using it effectively and sharing best practice, then you're able to get better results across the board.
I agree completely. And I think that was the best thing about SEAT for me is typically when I go to a conference, it's Major League Baseball. And that's great because it's great to talk to other teams and my peers at other teams. But being able to sit in with the NFL, NHL, soccer teams from England, you really pick up on some new things that maybe you never thought of before. And that was so beneficial to us when we came back. I had pages and pages of notes and people to reach out to. And I think that's what I took away from SEAT is not only the connections that I made, but the things that people are doing in other aspects of our industry.
And I think the other part, which is, why I wanted to touch base with you, is not only were you getting up there to talk about what you've done, but it was being done with Scribe side by side, and you were taking people through a case study rather than, no offense to Lou, but if a sponsor gets up and starts spruiking their wares, it's like, well, hang on, we've heard the sales script before, but we don't want a sales script. We want to get our hands dirty and sort of find out exactly what you did and how you went about it and some of the lessons you learned and the places that you stumbled. I think that's really good when a team and reps from the team will get up and talk about how they're using products, because a lot of the success is in the how, and how you go about doing it and why you chose that tool and how the integration worked, and not just look at the feature set and, here's our product feature list and those kind of things.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because as somebody who's using a lot of the software that was being presented by teams and also the vendors that were there, it's a lot easier for you to relate to a specific software whenever you know how other people are using it. So I can kind of put myself in their shoes, whereas previously if somebody was just getting up there telling me about how their software works, it's a little bit tougher for me to say, okay, well, if I took this back to the ballpark, I could use it here, here, and here. But when you have somebody up there, especially a trusted colleague within the industry, and you can hear a little bit about not only how it worked for them, but some of the, the road bumps that they came across, it makes it a little bit more real and a little bit more susceptible for us to maybe go down that route, because we understand how it could be a positive thing for our company.
So one thing I did want to ask, I guess we seem to be getting more and more data from fans and just from life in the fact that we've got all these devices that track everything. The new iPhone's going to be tracking where we are. Our watch is going to tell us what our heart rate is. Is there a case that there's too much data that will get us to a point where enough is enough?
I think that's a tough question. I don't think there can ever be too much data, but I think it's up to the individuals using it to figure out what they actually need out of that data. So for us, if we took all the data that was out there for us to use, I would use a completely different set for something that I was doing than, say, maybe somebody in marketing would use. So I think it's very important that you have all of that data, and yes, sometimes it can get a little bit watered down, but I'm a firm believer that all data out there is good data and that you can use it in some form or fashion.
Yeah, very good. I just want to go back on a point you were saying before about rolling out a CRM and really getting buy-in across the whole organization, because getting that good data and understanding that data is a real company-wide thing. Quite in the digital track, we pretty much had the same discussion, saying digital is everywhere, it's pervasive, it's across the whole organization. And I think the both sort of are hand in hand in that all of your different departments will benefit if they understand and buy in why we're getting the data, why we're reaching these fans. So I think we need to talk to Christine and get a few more sessions where we get the digital guys and the CRM guys in the same room as well, just thrashing out some of those topics.
Right. I think that would be very beneficial as well, because there were some things that we talked about on the CRM and data analytics track that we brought back to our organization and sat down with members of our IT department and our marketing department and said, this came up in one of our sessions. How would we be able to implement that? And would it be beneficial in your areas as well? And I think that it's very important to kind of showcase how the different departments work together to not only get to a common goal, but how it benefits each department as well. I think that's very, very important when you're not only trying to sell a product, but also figure out the best route for your company.
Yep. One of the phrases in your slide deck is, I was checking it out before this interview, it's all about the cheeks in the seats. I love that phrase. I'm going to start using it more often about getting people to the game. Is that one yours?
It's actually not. I have to give credit to Lou for that one.
Oh well, it's all about the cheeks and the seats. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be using that one from now on.
It's definitely true.
It is. It's all about getting people there. It's all about engaging them when they are there. And what you can do is get that data to understand why they are there, why they are turning up, who they're turning up with, where they're coming from, because everyone has different motivations. And so that's the fascinating thing with the data side of it. There's so many different views of the data to be able to find those different types of fans.
I agree completely.
Well, Katie, thank you very much for spending some time. I'm looking forward to catching up with you in San Francisco next year for SEAT 2015.
I look forward to it, and it was great catching up with you as well, Sean.
Want to understand Facebook advertising options? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/FB ads.
Thanks again to Katie Morgan from the Texas Rangers. Like with all the guests, as I said earlier, you can connect with them all at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Just follow the links. There's a link to the episode guides, the previous episodes, and also a link to all the guests. So thanks to Katie, and thanks to ScribeSoft as a seat sponsor for helping tee up that interview. That wraps up this episode of Sports Geek Podcast. I guess one thing I wanted to talk about is the announcement recently that Twitter is going to integrate and start offering the Twitter buy button, which is really just an extension of the Twitter cards and bringing in a payment facility. I'll be interested in your takes on it. We heard previously there with Katie that a lot of teams are having some success selling tickets, both via Twitter and via Facebook. So it'll be interesting to see how the buy button works, and the integration will be the key part, getting it to work with the payment providers and then getting it to work with the ticketing providers. That will be where the secret sauce will happen. But if you are not using the Twitter cards right now for some of your activations, whether it be email sign-ups or even just to promote some of your key content, I really suggest you should look into that. You've probably seen the Twitter cards that I've been using with Sports Geek to either promote people to go to the iTunes store to review the podcast, which you can do at sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. So play around with that. Just simply go into your analytics and the ads side of your Twitter account and set up some Twitter cards, some really cool stuff. Social media post of the week is going to go out to TBS on MLB with this great promo from Bryan Cranston of Breaking Bad fame. Here's a snippet.
I had been doing a lot of TV and movie work, and I felt it was just time for me to get back to the basics by diving right into my great passion, baseball. And I also knew that I wanted to do this one-man show, so then it hit me. Why not dramatize the entire MLB postseason? It would be my greatest acting challenge. And there were problems. I sunk a lot of money into this. But you never know when inspiration will hit you. The Bugster, Mr. B. Any actor who tells you that he's not inspired by Bugs Bunny is a liar.
as I said, it's about a 5 or 6 minute mini movie, and some really good work there by the guys at the Bleacher Report. It's on the Bleacher Report's YouTube channel. I'll put that link in the show notes. Definitely watch it. Great way to promo the upcoming MLB playoffs. There's the clock wind up. It is telling me it is time to wind up this episode and let you get on with your day. You can find the show notes for this episode at sportsgeekhq.com/60. So that's 60 episodes of the Sports Geek podcast. Thank you very much for downloading and supporting the podcast. I'm going to dedicate this episode to this man. See if you know who he is.
Just threw it up there and went in. Well, he has the record, and McHale goes over to congratulate him. McHale, Ainge, Larry Bird has 57 points, an all-time Boston record for one game. And McHale had set the record less than 2 weeks ago. Bird, foul shot, got it. Bird has 58. And with 3 seconds, Bird will try another jumper and hit it at the buzzer. Bird has 60 points. Larry Bird scored 60 points. Look at the Boston players mob him. Larry Bird scored 60. It is the greatest shooting exhibition I've ever seen in my life. Larry Bird, one more impossible shot after the other.
There you go. Larry Bird scoring 60 points versus the Atlanta Hawks way back in March 12, 1985, playing a game in New Orleans of all places. So I used some highlights for the 50-point win, for the 50th episode with Michael Jordan. So I thought 60 points. I pretty much put 60 points into YouTube, and Larry Bird was one of the first names that came up. So I'm going to dedicate this episode to him. Thank you very much for listening to the Sports Geek podcast. Please, as I said, send me a tweet. I really do like it when people are live tweeting as they're listening to the episode. Connect with the guests. And if you've got a question, please send me an email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Until next week, cheers from me.
Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources. Did you know Sports Geek Podcast has listeners in over 35 countries? Thank you for sharing. Thanks for reviews on iTunes. sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes.